Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for your quick update on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today in the Workplace Minute, we're looking at the rapid rise of workers forced to take multiple jobs to make ends meet. Now, HR and business leaders can step up to support these workers who are at risk of disengagement and burnout because of this trend. Let's break it down. Across the U.S., the number of part-time workers who say they would prefer full-time positions jumped sharply in November to an 8-year high. Meanwhile, those with multiple jobs, at about 5.7% of the workforce, is at its highest level in more than 25 years, according to monthly figures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In all, a record 9.3 million Americans worked more than one job in November, and that's a 10% increase from a year earlier. The data reflects, at least partially, disruptions from the recent federal government shutdown, which left hundreds of thousands of Americans furloughed without pay from October 1st to November 12th. And many of those workers, along with contractors, consultants, and others who felt the effects of the shutdown, may have been forced to pick up side jobs or part-time gigs to make up for lost pay. But economists also point to a broader shift in Americans' finances and the rising concerns about affordability that are driving them to pick up more work. Of note, the number of Americans with 2 full-time jobs has jumped by 18% in the past year, with women making up the bulk of that increase. Now, experts say in theory, if people want to have multiple jobs and they're able to find them, well, that's a good thing. But from a human perspective, the fact that more people are working 2 full-time jobs out of economic necessity, well, that's hard to think of as a positive development. The U.S. labor market has cooled markedly in the past year, with employers adding just 67,000 jobs in the past 3 months total. By comparison, a year ago, that number was 8 times larger. The unemployment rate at 4.6% is at a 4-year high, and new data to be released soon expect to show further slowing in the labor market in December as employers keep holding off on hiring. So that's left job seekers in a really tough position. Layoffs are still relatively low, and a sign that companies would just simply not expand, then get rid of existing workers, which makes it really difficult for newcomers to break in. So to that end, the number of people working part-time because they couldn't find a full-time job, that's gradually been rising since 2023. And the surge in November, a 62% increase from a year earlier, was the biggest annual jump on record, and that goes back to 1956. And economists also note that a worrisome sign is the big increase in the number of people working part-time for economic reasons. This measure is a classic barometer of underemployment, as it tends to go up when the labor market is getting worse. So for HR and business leaders, this means more of your workforce has taken on an additional job outside of your organization. Understanding that reality and taking proactive steps to support these workers is critical, both from a productivity perspective as well as from an employee well-being perspective. So we came up with 5 practical employer-controlled actions HR and business leaders could implement to support their employees who are working multiple jobs, with an explicit focus on sustaining your productivity, but also reducing burnout risk and helping employees with their financial, physical, and mental well-being. First, flexible scheduling needs to be normalized. Organizations should move beyond just ad hoc flexibility and formally recognize that some employees are managing additional work outside the company. This means offering predictable schedules, flexible start and end times, maybe compressed work weeks, and clearly defining when off-hours work is feasible and not feasible. And importantly, flexibility should not be treated as a concession to workers. Managers should be trained to evaluate outcomes and deliverables rather than simply time in seats. And policies should protect employees from any stigma or retaliation when they request schedule accommodations. Next, on pay and earnings. For many employees, second jobs are just a rational response to income instability, not a lack of commitment. Employers should proactively review their base pay, overtime eligibility, shift premiums, and other bonus structures to identify opportunities to reduce earnings volatility. When immediate wage increases are not possible or feasible, consider guaranteeing minimum hours, more predictable scheduling, or more frequent pay cycles. And offering earned wage access responsibly can help employees manage their cash flow without having them to resort to predatory pay loans. Next, benefits. Traditional benefits often fail to support workers who are juggling multiple jobs. Employers should prioritize benefits that reduce the friction in their daily lives, such as affordable health care, mental health services, childcare and caregiving support, including backup childcare, maybe transportation subsidies, access to financial planning and well-being, coaching. Even modest investments in these areas can materially reduce employee stress and absenteeism. Let's talk about workloads and performance expectations. Employees who are working multiple jobs face a significantly higher risk of exhaustion and cognitive overload. Leaders should understand this and reassess workload distribution, staffing levels, and performance expectations to ensure roles are realistically scoped. This includes eliminating unnecessary meetings, being clear on priorities, and providing managers with guidance on recognizing early signs of burnout. And high performers should not be rewarded with unsustainable workloads simply because they're good or they're handling it. And finally, psychological safety around these financial realities. Many employees, they hide these second or third jobs out of fear of being perceived as disengaged or disloyal. Employers should explicitly acknowledge the affordability crisis and communicate with empathy and understanding. This can be reinforced through manager training, internal communications, and employee listening. When employees feel safe about being honest about their circumstances, organizations can design more effective supports and help avoid preventable attrition. The rise of employees holding multiple jobs is a structural and logical response to economic pressure. Employers that adapt their policies, benefits, and management practices to this reality will be better positioned to retain talent, sustain performance, and demonstrate credible leadership and empathy in a time of affordability stress. And ignoring these issues will simply increase the risk of burnout, disengagement, and turnover at exactly the moment stability matters the most to the workforce. Thanks so much for listening today, and a big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how your organization can better support your workforce in this period of difficulty, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.